Can you design an entire fake Pokemon region in just 1 hour? The answer is yes. Well, sort of. In this video, I'll show you the terrible quality you can expect from this sort of challenge, and redesign the sloppy Scribbles as actual Fakemon. Here's what inspired me to do this. So one of the accounts I follow recently blew up on Pokemon Twitter. Apparently the Fakemon artist Pseudo was offered $30. To design an entire 151 Pokemon Pokedex, that isn't really a realistic amount to commission that many Pokemon designs. But it did get me thinking, what if I was offered that deal? 30 bucks is 30 bucks? I could do it, but only if I could finish all of the designs in just 1 hour. 151 Pokemon designs in 1 hour. For the record, even just 1 hour of Pokemon designing for only $30 still is kind of underselling your labor. Know your worth, kings and queens. Still, I thought it'd be fun for a challenge. To start, I did a little prep work in planning the basics of a good Pokemon region. I did the math. 151 Pokemon drawn in 1 hour would mean completing each design in a bit over 23 seconds each. So to calibrate how fast I'd have to draw, I set a timer and worked on just trying to draw Pikachu. This video is sped up a little bit because I didn't want to make you sit through an entire 23 seconds. I went right into drawing the black outline, starting with the face and the ears. Then I moved on to coloring it and then went on to shape. Uh-oh. This is not good. Folks, this is not good. Okay, 23 seconds is even less time than I thought it would be. I'd have to draw much sloppier than that. Plus, I knew I absolutely would not have time to add color to any drawing. So to make it a little less boring visually, I started scribbling blots of color across the entire grid. I'd then have a little something to go on for each design. I'm sad to admit that even this task took about 10 minutes. So I had already wasted about 30 minutes before even beginning a single design. I didn't want to waste any more time. I was finally ready to start the clock right now. Starting with the starter Pokemon. Normally if I was making a fake Pokemon region, I would think of animals that fit in the country it's inspired by, plan out secondary types that worked well together, etc. But that takes time, and we're on a $30 budget here. But just to keep this video from being too boring, on occasion I'll pause on a design I think has some potential, and show you what it would look like if I put in actual effort. A Rhino Firestarter seems too fun not to draw. Okay, now let's continue. Normally, I have my fingers glued to the Control-Z button, as I constantly have to undo and redo lines as I'm drawing. I tried to keep that to a minimum as I went, and just accept the drawings as they came naturally. I also only had a split second to react to the blot of color, think about what it could look like based on the typing. But the water starter was really giving me some trouble. Really had zero clue what I was doing with this Scribble originally, but somehow a mummy octopus could actually work. What does this have to do with the other starters? Don't ask me. Okay, let's continue. After the starter Pokemon came your typical inclusions of fake Pokemon regions. Early route birds, early route bugs, early route mammals, and Pikachu clones. Again, this was literally all the planning I did. I just sort of drew what I saw in the scribbles, sort of similar to watching the clouds. But I did decide to throw in a few examples of things you often see in Pokemon regions. For example, not totally sure if villain mammal is a real official Pokemon term, but think of Pokemon like Mightyena or Houndoom. I really had no clue at first what this animal was, but eventually I decided it looks like the phrase a wolf in sheep's clothing, so I went with that. The final stage looked a bit too silly for this interesting of a concept, so I went ahead and drew it for real. That's much better. Back to the scribbles. As I said, I went on to design the early route Pokemon. Some designs were definitely taking me more than 23 seconds, but good thing some designs took a lot less time. Fortunately, these birds were really simple and fast, and I honestly don't hate how derpy they look. Then I went on to the early route bugs. The first stage is a larva with a dagger, which that's cool. Then it evolves and gets armor. I won't redesign these in this video. They get my seal of approval, but they aren't great. And then I got to the Pikachu clones. I really wanted them to be some sort of animal we haven't seen as a Pikachu clone. Looking back, I'd say they sort of look like aardvarks? I don't know. No clue what I like about this little guy, but a ground type dust doggy seems fun. Hey, by the way, if you feel so inclined, let me know what you would name each of these Pokemon, because I am really not good with names. I'd love to hear what you come up with. The rest of the Dusty Dog line turned out pretty okay. Though there was a weird part of the final stage that I didn't really know what to do with. I guess he just sort of has a random chef hat or something. Next, I couldn't think of what to do with these shapes, so I just went with snakes. Pretty much the laziest way to interpret the Scribble. Since they're set to be water and poison type, I guess that would make them snake cyclones. And then I get to the first design that I'd say is just awful. Irredeemably bad. I guess they're bats trapped in ice cubes or something. I don't know. They're terrible. But fortunately, I think this line of steel and normal type Wolverine things is better, and we're back on track. Did you know that normal and steel type is a combination that's never been used before? In the little preparation I did for this, I made sure to put in some type combos that have never been used before. Ghost and Rock is a good example. Since the Pokemon Company for some reason didn't want Runerigus to be Ghost and Rock type, I went ahead and made my own Gravestone Pokemon. Here's an updated design. Alright, let's move on. I like its evolved form too. It doesn't look much different, just bigger and gross legs, but that works. And the start of this next evolutionary line is pretty nice as well. Very simple, yet something nice about it. If there's one good thing about this experiment, it's that it gets me to not overthink the designs. I liked the idea of a turtle hiding in a snow fort, but this looked kinda derpy. There, that's better. Now its shell doesn't look butt-shaped. Let's move on. I was struggling to think of a country this region could be based on, as it's not something I put any time into thinking about. But once I got to this design that clearly represents kangaroos, well, other than the first stage, I guess maybe it could be Australia? That could be a cool region for Gen 10. But then I get to these generic rock fairy creatures that look more like Easter Island heads with wings, so I don't know. If there's any Australian folklore that fits with this, it's a coincidence. But let me know, I guess. Okay, I put down a dragon and normal type Pokemon because I think it's a fun and unique type combo, but the result was unfortunately not so good. I guess it's like a raccoon dragon. Its evolved form ended up being marginally better, though I'm not sure I see the dragon type other than it just being green. Then oddly enough, this dark and fairy type thing, I think actually turned out to be kind of cool. Zero clue what it is. It's nothing really, but at least it looks like it'd be a fun design. Okay, I really didn't have much to work with these scribbles. And at first I mostly just struggled thinking of animals that could be found in cold climates for the ice type. I ended up going with a seal, or a walrus, with lightning spikes for some reason. Super random, doesn't seem too bad though. I just don't think the Pokemon Company makes designs with as little thought put into it as this. At least, I don't think they do. And yet, sometimes during this experiment, I somehow flopped my way into a design with interesting inspiration. For example, okay, I seriously love this design. Sort of looked like a Borzoi, but surrounded by topiary. I was thinking you could shape that hedge into a fist for the fighting type. Something like that would be really cool. Sadly, I'd say its evolved forms did not end up so great. I kept with the theme of it being able to shape the plant matter into arms or whatever, but made it go from standing on two legs to being on all fours, and back to two legs again. And it gets these ugly pigtail things, I guess. Fun fact, did you know the Poniard line are the only Dark and Steel type Pokemon in existence? It's fun adding uncommonly used type combos to fake regions. And I've also seen a lot of regions add completely new Pokemon types. I thought, screw it, might as well do that. Sound type seems pretty reasonable, so I made a few sound type Pokemon. The first ended up just being little guys with headphones. Then I made some fish, but they're singing. I don't know, maybe they're trumpets or clarinets, if I worked with the designs a little bit more. I wish I thought of that while designing them. And then I made an electric guitar Pokemon that's not Toxtricity, just a guy made out of electricity with a guitar. Next, steel and sound type. Obviously, gonna do one of those cymbal playing monkey things. I'm not totally sure what sound type would be good against or weak against, but I can only imagine sound and steel type would be a pretty solid combination. Might as well do at least one of the sound type Pokemon, so this monkey with cymbals works. The Scribble looked a little bit more like it was holding brass coconuts rather than cymbals, so whatever, that can be part of its design. Okay, at this point, I kind of felt like I was getting the hang of things. I made these Bug-A-Normal type fluffy bugs that I actually really liked and will probably do something with in the future. I like that its middle evolution looks like the Lorax. Then it evolves and becomes a beautiful fluffy moth thing. Very nice. And then I even moved on to some designs that I have no clue what they are, but I still think they're kind of cool. They're poison and rock type Viking snail slug things. No clue. Then some fire and ice type puffin or penguin Pokemon, which are cool. I'm not so sure this is an Australian inspired region anymore though. Actually, I googled it and it turns out that there are little penguins that can be found off the coast of Australia. Then I break my streak and get some designs that I don't really like at all. They're dark and ground type mole drill things, which could be cool, but with the scribbles, I guess I decided to give them these random wing things for some reason. Then I moved on to a trio of Pokemon that are fire and water type, water and grass type, and grass and fire type, which that's pretty neat. But are they in the same evolutionary line? Are they a legendary trio? Or are they just some random weird little guys? You decide. Hey, we're almost to the halfway point. Another category for Pokemon that I guess I wanted to include in this region was a roadblock Pokemon. Think of things like Snorlax or Pseudo. I kinda loved this super tall castle bear guy, so very nice. It's gotta be normal and rock type, but help me come up with a name. Next is Water and Steel. Did you know that Empoleon is the only Pokemon that uses this type combo? Sounds surprising, but it's true. I feel like I majorly flopped on this design though. Empoleon deserves to keep that title. Water and Steel crocodiles are a cool concept, but I'd probably just scrap this whole line. And then we get to the ghost and fighting ghosts. Do we need more ghost Pokemon that are just inspired by generic ghosts? Probably not. Then we get to another type combo that actually has never been used at all before. Fire and Fairy type. I made this a 3-stage Pokemon because I thought it would be cool, and it didn't really turn out great. There are squirrels, I guess, with wings, and each stage gets a little bigger. Then I continue my losing streak with easily the worst design in this entire video. We do not need a squiggly line Pokemon. Okay, finally we get to a design that I think is somewhat redeemable. It's like a campfire brought to life, but it ends up being more of a spider, maybe a fire ant. Next, we get to a situation where I made 2 unconnected scribbles, didn't quite know how to make it into one Pokemon. I quickly decided to make it into a little cat thing with a thought bubble. Sure, that fits the psychic type. Makes as much sense as anything else in this video. I guess maybe the thought cloud could be the real Pokemon, representing negative thoughts, and it gets bigger as it evolves, eventually taking over the cat, shrinking it down with negative feelings. On to just filling the Pokedex with monotypes, which I really wanted to avoid this just being a generic ghost, so I made it into, I guess, a lionfish. It's cool. Feels like it'd also be water type though. Okay, I'm shocked there isn't really a Pokemon themed around baseball yet, so I went with the pun by making a baseball bat. Bat being the animal. Usually not a fan of Pokemon using objects in their design, but if the bat's made of lightning and thunder cracks when he uses it, I think that could work. If you have ideas for a name for this, let me know. Next we move on to a ground type Pokemon. I guess I made into a hamster, and then I get into another situation yet again where I made 2 blots of colors. I remember that capybaras are known for being friendly and decided to go with that for the design. Let's say once your friendliness is high enough, it evolves and attracts a friend. One of them watches guard while the other one sleeps. If Mousehold works as a Pokemon, this can too. I then moved on to these Ice Cube Bighorn sheep things, which I kinda loved. I like that the second stage gets barely any bigger, but its horns get much larger. I wish I could draw almost all of these for real, but just didn't have time for this video. The mono grass type Pokemon ended up being a literal field mouse with a garden growing on its back. I feel like this could be cool for an early route Pokemon, even though we're already over halfway through the Pokedex. And just when I thought I was on a roll of making some good designs... Okay, this is one of the most hideous things I've ever drawn. Let's totally redo it. That's better. A little fairy type elephant could be cool. Then I follow with a design that could have interesting inspiration. A dragon on top of a pile of gold. But it just somehow doesn't feel like a Pokemon like this. Next I made some water snail things where the shell is a fishbowl, which could be okay. At least they were quick. Then I made these mono flying type birds that unfortunately look almost identical to each other. Like I basically just added spikes as it evolves. I guess it could literally be a scissor tail flycatcher, which is a type of bird, but with real scissors. So I feel like that would be flying and steel type. Okay, I feel like we've really reverted back to early route Pokemon here. I made these bunnies, which I like the design, just feels like a dumb move given the fact that the grass starter Pokemon is also a bunny. Threw some squiggly ears on it and called it a day. Mono Poison type, I started making a mushroom dune, then I began drawing its second stage into a jellyfish mushroom, only to remember that's more or less what Toedscruel already is. So I switched it to a bigger mushroom. I thought it was funny to make an upside down turtle Pokemon and just decided to keep going with it. It evolves into a turtle that is stacked on a rock. I guess it just uses its tail to push itself around. Final stage, he just stacks on even more rocks. This is so dumb. Peak Pokemon design right there. They've made Pokemon with cursed existences like this before, so maybe this could be a real Pokemon. Next is Mono Fighting type. I went with those inflatable clown punching bags you used to hit as a kid. These designs I think are pretty cool. And they're different enough from Wobbuffet to work, I think. I don't know why, but it seems like a Pokemon Jesse and James might have. Then I wanted to do a split evolution, sort of like Eevee, but with a bug-type Pokemon. And at first I thought I was genius. It starts with a young grasshopper with unlimited potential and takes different warriors' paths. But then I made one of its evolutions into a ninja, which I guess is either pretty much ninja-esque or low kicks. And then the other two evolutions, I don't even know what warriors they're inspired by. They kind of give me Piccolo from DBZ vibes though. Okay, this Pokemon just looks like something you'd see in Smiling Friends. It can't be an electric sheep because that's already Mareep, just a cloud that stings you with lightning, like a scorpion, I guess. And this is yet another design where I have zero clue what it is. But in this case, I actually like it. It's so ugly, yet that makes it so awesome. Like he's dark type because he was bullied for being so ugly. This Scribble turned out very not good. Though I do like the idea of a ground type Sphinx Pokemon. That's better. Probably a regional form of Shanks. Then sadly, its second stage also looks bad. No clue what I was going for with that pose. Oh well, we gotta move on. Hey, this ice type turned out okay. It's just a set of salamanders with icicles on its back. It doesn't look much different, but they turned out pretty nice looking, I think. Ghost type is probably my favorite type, and I loved the idea of this little Medusa ghost. Nice. Maybe I'll use this in a future project. I'm still not totally sure if I'll fully finish this region, or if I'll recycle some of these designs for a real region based on a specific country, but this trio seems cool, and I definitely would like to use them. Hopefully they're generic enough that they could fit almost anywhere, right? Next we move on to Fossil Pokemon, which is an always nice addition to a Pokemon region. I fortunately could think of some dinosaurs that we haven't had as fossil Pokemon yet. The first one is a Hadrosaur, that duck-billed dinosaur, and the second one is a Stegosaurus. Hopefully we get actual Pokemon like this someday. Okay, Champion's Ace really doesn't seem like an official category. Really not sure what animal this is, but I guess it looks like a bobcat. That works for me. I wanted to make just some cool looking Pokemon that the champion could use. I guess maybe it's a pseudo legendary, though not all champions use pseudo legendaries, so maybe not, I don't know. Villain's Ace is also another weird one. Just an evil Pokemon for the leader of the villain team to use. The first stage turned out cool. Second stage looks freaky with these skinny legs, but maybe it could be cool. Just to be certain, every region does need a good pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Honestly, we probably have too many that look like dragons, so all I wanted to do was avoid that. Zero clue what animal this is. Is it a dog? Is it a bear? Hey, all I know is it's not a dragon. It's funny, I feel like the first stage I was obviously going for fire type, but not so sure I'd give this fire type. Now we get to do some legendary Pokemon. Really didn't know what to do with the legendary trio. They kind of ended up just being creepy, crawly animals. Hopefully they're not poison type, though they certainly look poison type, because that's already taken by the Loyal 3. Okay, now I just have the main box art legendary Pokemon and the mythical Pokemon left. I will get to that, but first I want to take a few seconds for some quick reflections on this experiment. Now, here's a few reasons why this is a terrible way to design Pokemon. Without doing any planning, the starters don't fit any theme, as far as I know. And in fact, none of the region feels unified at all, really. I did zero thinking on what animals or inspiration each Pokemon would need. In this region, there are about 14 dog Pokemon, 5 Pokemon that are nothing. Just zero clue what they are at all. But here are a few reasons I think this is actually a great way to design Pokemon. Drawing these as fast as I could made for some technically flawed designs that actually showed unique character. Plus, it's kind of just a fun way to just get started and get past designer's block. You don't need to worry about it looking good. You know it's going to look bad, and that's okay. That's part of the fun. So I say, if you want to try this and use it as a way to design your own fake Pokemon, I say go for it. Okay, now we can finally wrap this up and move on to the box art legendaries, and one final mythical Pokemon. First, let's go with the mascot for, I guess, Sky Blue version? I don't know. Well, looks like I gave it a cloud around its shoulders, so let's use that for the final design. Is it a gorilla? Is it a frog monster? No clue, but man, I think I would definitely choose this version. Next is the mascot for reddish pink version, I guess. Is it a kangaroo? Is it a dinosaur? I went and designed it for real, and still no clue. Let me know if you can come up with a name for this, and honestly, tell me what type you'd think it'd be. And finally, after all of this time, we can finally finish strong with the mythical Pokemon. Ghost is my favorite type, so screw it, I made it a little skeleton king thing. I don't know. Here's the final design. Again, help me come up with a name, and if you're creative, tell me how this could possibly fit in with the other two legendaries, because I have zero clue. So there you have it, 30 imaginary dollars in the bank, and all it took was an hour of drawing. Well, plus 30 minutes of prep work, and plus about 15 hours of drawing 20 completed designs. Plus, probably 12 hours of video editing, meaning in this made-up scenario, I would have made about $1 an hour. Please like and subscribe, my family is starving.